Okay guys, well in this video I am actually going to try and address the difference between who the real Jews are as opposed to those who consider themselves Jews and are actually imposters. And those who actually call themselves Jews and are actually imposters are not even aware that they are actually not real Jews. And this is because they have allowed themselves to be led into the ditch by the clergy, and there were many warnings left to us in regards to the clergy, and people unfortunately do not trust their own intellect and do not heed the teachings within their Bible or within the scriptures. And not just the Bible, we need to understand that all scriptures are divine revelation, and the Catholic Church was not the only one gifted divine revelation. Divine revelation was gifted to every culture and every race, and all religions contain fragments of the truth, and we need to actually do our research into cross-culture theology so that we can see the complete picture instead of only looking to a certain small perception based on what the clergy of a particular major organisation are relaying to their flock. And so, unfortunately, people who follow Judaism now consider themselves Jewish. And the actual fact is that only those who are divine are Jewish. And this is where we have to look to the esoteric information to understand what is happening politically. Because as I say in many of my videos, the esoteric is connected to the political and the religious situations that are now unfolding across our planet. We cannot separate church and state because they are connected. We cannot separate philosophy into religion and science as two separate categories because they are fused. And so if people are unable to understand that everything is connected and everything that is unfolding now in relation to our political environment as well as our religious environment, if people cannot understand that these situations are connected and that the situations are originating in the esoteric subject and the esoteric knowledge, then I would suggest that you please do not continue on watching this video, because what I'm about to relate in this video is information that requires somebody to have to put aside all of their prejudices and everything that they have been taught in their government indoctrination departments to be the truth, because everything that we have thought was the truth is a lie, and we have to actually go and self-educate now and use all of the information and all of the ancient knowledge and the ancient texts and the symbolism that was left to us so that we can actually understand the truth. Because what people are now doing is actually just looking at the surface of all of the information that is relayed to them through various media outlets, whether that be the mainstream media or large alternative media channels who profess to have the truth, or certain blogs who profess to have the truth. And all we're really getting from all of these different departments is opinion. Nobody is actually relating the truth to us. So we have to be basically in control of our own intellect, and we have to have courage in ourselves to go and research the actual information that was left to us by the ancients, because they understood that there would be times such as we are living in now where we would require this information to have an understanding of what is actually unfolding around our planet, because there is nothing but division, dissension, disharmony, discord, and chaos everywhere we look, whether it be political, religious, race, gender, it really doesn't matter where we actually look to try and find some type of balance and harmony, because we cannot find any harmony and any balance in any different area that we look. And this is because we are in a time within the great year, the cycle that we exist in, and this is something that you are not taught in your government indoctrination department. They do not explain to you that you exist in a cycle and that we move through this cycle from higher ages, which is the golden age, and the silver age, where we are more connected to the ethereal and more connected to knowledge and an understanding of our spiritual nature, our divine nature, our ethereal nature, our souls. None of this is taught in school, because now we've become materialists, because we exist in the lower ages, which are the Bronze Age and the Iron Age. Now, every culture spoke of this cycle. Every culture spoke of these ages, and every culture spoke of mankind moving from the higher ages and descending into the lower ages or the darker ages and into a time of ignorance. And I have plenty of videos on my channel discussing this cycle in more detail. So what I am going to try and do in this video is just give you the basics, and then if people want to research further, I have more information on my channel and I have more sources available to find information for yourself directly from the ancient texts, because everything that I am relaying in this video is available in the ancient texts, the ancient philosophies, and the scriptures from all of the major organized religions that have now deemed themselves the only religion that are in possession of the truth. And every religion is guilty of doing this, whether it be Christians, whether it be those that follow Judaism, or whether it be those that follow Islam, or those that follow Hinduism or Buddhists. They all proclaim to be the only particular group that are in full possession of all truths. And the fact is that there is only one source of divine truth. And every single religion and every single philosophy and brotherhood are just relating that divine revelation in their own way of expression. And so all religions are just expressing the same knowledge. And we can see this in the way that they use archetypal symbolism. And we can see that there is a common thread of knowledge that is within every single religion and every single philosophy. But we have to understand how to look beneath the parables, look beneath the symbolism, and look beneath the myths and the stories to find that core truth that has been encoded or occulted within all of these mythologies and these parables and scriptures and ancient texts. Because knowledge is not just there for anybody to be handed on a silver platter. The ancients encoded the knowledge and the truths within parables and mythology, because knowledge is only for those who have the courage and have the faith within their own intellect and the willpower to actually go and seek it out. And this basically is a way that the wheat is sorted from the chaff. This is how those who are deserving of knowledge are differentiated from those who just want to be led around and told what to believe, because the universe does not reward those who are mentally lazy. And due to the fact that at the end of the cycle, when the light returns, there are only going to be those who have followed universal laws and align themselves with universal law that are going to move into the new great year. And this is where we see the symbolism of judgment. This is where we see the symbolism behind the parable of the tars, which can not only be found in the Christian scriptures, but also within the Gnostic texts in the Gospel of Thomas. And we can see that at this time, those who were intent on the truth only for reasons that were of a higher understanding and for virtuous motivation will find themselves able to move into the new great year, because everything is based on our ethereal nature. And when we move outside of alignment with the divine laws, with the universal laws, because the universe is mental, everything is consciousness, that means we are existing in a conscious universe. And when we make conscious choices, they reflect within us, within our soul. And so when we move outside of universal law, we are actually creating sin, which is weight within our soul. And when the time comes for each soul to be weighed for the light that is within them, this is when we can see that some will not actually have that light required to move into a new great year. Now, as I have said, all of this information is available on my channel for those who want to go and seek further. This subject is very involved, but also very simplistic. It is not a subject that is something that requires endless equations and endless theories and, endless aisles of texts and books to understand. What has happened is we were given an immense amount of information because that knowledge is used to occult the truth. But the truth is very simple. When you move beyond the white noise and you move beyond all of the words and over explanations, the truth is very simple. But the truth is something that is very different to what we have been taught in our government indoctrination departments. And so when people are confronted with the truth, they are very threatened by this, because the truth shows us we are accountable for our actions. The truth shows us that when we are denigrating another race or another culture or another person based on their differences to us, that this is actually something that is reflected in the light that we carry. And there will be a time where that will make a difference to your fate. And every man is in control of his own fate. It is not a deity that sits in the clouds with a book that determines who is evil and who is good. Each man determines his own fate by the paths and the choices that he chooses to make. And so this is why we need to ensure that we have an understanding of what those universal laws are, so we continue to walk on the path that is in alignment with universal law, because the laws are solid. They are in stone. This is what the sword in the stone symbolism actually relates to. It means that laws are unchanging. God's word, which is related through the symbolism of the sword, is in stone. It does not change. Universal law does not change. And it is up to us whether we are in alignment with universal law, or whether we are out of alignment with universal law. And so when we move to call all Jewish people hateful names, because we have confused those who call themselves Jews with the real Jews who are the children of God, then we are actually not in alignment with universal law. And so that is a decision we have made within ourselves to move outside of alignment with what universal law is in stone. And this is the same with homosexual behavior. Homosexual behavior is not within universal law, because universal law supports procreation of the species. And procreation of the species cannot continue when we have homosexual behavior. And so homosexuals are actually moving out of alignment with universal law. So they will bring about their own destruction. It's not about somebody judging them and being a bigot. It's about them making decisions of whether they want to continue in alignment with the universal laws that are there, or they want to move outside universal laws and instead follow their carnal urges, because that's our test. Our test is that we do have an ethereal nature and we do have a physical nature. And our test is to either move beyond our carnal urges and our more animalistic nature into our more spiritual self and our higher self, our ethereal self. This is why the sacrum chakra, okay, is basically down towards our animalistic nature. It's instinctive. Whereas the third eye chakra and the crown chakra are in the higher areas of our nature because they are more connected to the ethereal, which is what the crown relates to. And so when we look to these symbols and we understand what the information is that is encoded with them, we can understand that we have a responsibility as a soul to live a life that is in balance. And if we are only living down towards our more baser and animalistic nature, then we're not really understanding or existing through our more spiritual nature. And we really are spiritual and ethereal beings before we are material beings, because we can look at our material body as basically a garment that houses our soul. And once again, this is not something that you will find in the mainstream media. This is not something that you will find related in major religious organizations, because when you are in possession of the truth, that gives you the gift of controlling your life, your journey. Nobody else is in control of you when you understand that you are a spiritual being first and your soul is immortal if you follow the universal laws and stay in alignment with these laws. The problem is that most people are ignorant to the fact that they are ethereal in nature, first and foremost, and so they live a purely materialistic existence. And this is why science was created, because most universities, in fact 99% of all of the universities in the United States were founded on Christianity, and this is also in Europe and the United Kingdom. These universities were founded on Christianity because what those who sought to take power did was use these institutions to separate religion and science, where back in the ancient times, philosophy was actually both spiritual, religious, and science. It was fused into one subject. And so what these men have sought to do, who have taken control of these major religious organizations to give themselves credibility and to hide behind religion while they basically steer mankind into the ditch, because they do understand the truth and they do understand we're in a cycle and they do understand that they will not inherit the kingdom, so they will destroy it and they will destroy us with it. What they sought to do is separate these two subjects. And so we have materialists who only see everything in a material way, and then we have religious people who only see everything in a spiritual way. So both are unbalanced, because you need to fuse the two. You need to acknowledge both science and religion to have a full understanding of the reality that we exist in. And so until people understand this, then they're really not going to understand this information I'm about to relate about who the real Jews are, and why, when everybody is blaming the Jews for all of the evil in the world, they are really just playing into the propaganda that those who have taken control, which are the Jesuit, who have basically taken control of all of our governments, all of our major religious organizations. It is the Vatican that controls all of our knowledge. You just have to look at the Vatican Library and how much information that was stolen from us is now locked away in the Vatican Library. They sought to destroy and burn all knowledge and all texts that they basically couldn't steal for themselves and lock away, so that we have no real understanding of who we are or our history, because everything that we have been taught about our history is incorrect. Okay, they have rewritten everything to create this false reality that we now exist in, that is mainly based on materialism, mainly based on looking at everything in a materialistic way. And basically mankind now worship at the altar of the money god. So money is the god of mankind, and everything that mankind do now is motivated by money. And this is exactly what the Jesuits have sought to do over the centuries, because what is now unfolding around our world isn't just decades in the making, it's centuries in the making, because it is the Vatican, it is the Catholic Church who are the oldest, secret, and most powerful and richest organization on this planet. People often love to blame the Jews, but when we look at the facts, Israel was only created in 1948. And if we actually look to the scriptures in regards to the Jews, then we can understand that there were warnings left that there would be those who call themselves Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Now, Satan is not a deity. Satan is a symbol for mankind when they are trapped in a materialistic view of themselves. The number 7 equates to the ether, equates to the spiritual. This is why we see the 7 gates to heaven, the the 7th heaven. 7 equates to the spiritual. 6 equates to the physical. Now, there is nothing evil in the physical, because we need the physical to express our spiritual nature on the physical plane and to have a physical experience. What we have to basically aim for is to have balance between the spiritual and the physical. And so when we see the symbol of Satan and the devil, what this relates to is those who are trapped in a purely material and physical perception of themselves and reality. And so those who are a synagogue of Satan are those who would encourage mankind to only view themselves in that way. And what is one of the best ways that the Vatican, the Jesuit, can encourage mankind to see themselves in only a materialistic way? Well, that would be to give them modern science, which basically tries to deny anything spiritual. And just because it cannot be measured and cannot be quantified, then modern science seeks to dismiss this. But modern science cannot explain the causal nature of the phenomena in our universe. They can measure and weigh and observe and quantify the effects, but they cannot explain the cause. They cannot explain to you how you were created with the golden mean ratio within your physical form. They cannot explain to you how all the planets stay in their orbit. They cannot explain to you what created the Big Bang. They can basically give you an understanding of a situation that was brought about by a sudden explosive event, but they cannot relate to you the causal influences behind that event. And they cannot explain to you how this chaotic event resulted in universal laws such as the golden mean ratio, which is apparent in every living thing. There are laws within nature, and modern science cannot give you any actual evidence of how these laws come to be. And this is because everything physical originates in the ethereal. And the ethereal is beyond matter. It takes something more within us to understand what the ethereal actually embodies. It takes something within us called intuition to look beyond the material, and these are parts of our tests as of being a soul in a materialistic creation as well as a spiritual creation. Our test is to look beyond materialism and to trust in ourselves and trust in our instincts and trust in what is unseen but still presents itself to us in nature, because we can see that there are laws. And so we need to go and investigate further and deeper into why this is. And this is something modern science cannot explain and cannot provide for us. And so when we see the use of the word Satan and the devil, this is often used by the major religious organizations like Christianity, the clergy, and the Vatican, who have basically taken control of all of these religions, use these types of symbols to put fear into those who do not want to seek further, who just want to trust in the clergy because they look godly, they appear godly, and so they want to trust in what the clergy tell them rather than trust in themselves to go and research further and to look into the scriptures and to apply the scriptures to their lives as they are taught within the Bible. Because if people did that, including people that just basically take this, it's all the Jews are evil, the Jews are the ones who are creating all of the problems on our planet. If people actually looked further into this, then they can see that the scriptures actually warn that there will be those who say that they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan, okay? And they'll also see this in this verse here, that I will make those of the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not, but lie. Behold, I will make them come and bow before your feet, and they will learn that I have loved you. Now, this is speaking of the imposters that call themselves Jews, as opposed to the real Jews, who are the children of God, who are the divine children of God. And the divine men within mankind only number 288, 144 females and 144 males. And these are who the gods are. And these are who all the symbols of the gods relate to. There is no religion that is polytheist. All religions are basically monotheist. They all believe in one God, but it is the symbolism that has been corrupted and confused, particularly in Buddhism and Hinduism, where each of these gods, which relate to a son of God, a divine man, is now looked to and worshipped as though this were the creator. But there is only one prime creator, and the sons of God are his first extensions. And so we can see everything in nature exists in hierarchy, and this happens within the creation of man too. And I will go on just to give you a basic understanding of how this creation has basically worked within mankind as well as everything in nature. It always starts in a form of hierarchy, from higher to lower, and that's in everything. Everyone wants to be equal, but that's not how nature works. The lion is not equal to the deer. The shark is not equal to the little tiny fish, the little fish that's swimming around. There is no such thing as all being equal in some way of perception. In other ways it is. I mean, we are all creations of God, and so in that way of perceiving, yes, we are all equal. Mankind are equal. We are all creations of the prime creator. However, there are degrees of divinity within mankind, and we can see this left to us in various texts, not only the Christian scriptures, but also in the Hermetic texts and in other texts and symbolism. This was left to us so that we have an understanding of how creation unfolds. And so before I go more into this and show what the meaning of the real Jews actually is related to, I just wanted to remind any Christians who are watching this video that they were warned that there would be those who were false apostles and deceitful workers masquerading as apostles of Christ, and no wonder, for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. So it is not surprising then that his servants also masquerade as servants of righteousness. Their end will be what their actions deserve. So this is what the Bible was relating to those who were following those who claim to be apostles and workers of Christ, which is the clergy. That Satan was not going to return as a entity with horns and a pitchfork, and they would be able to visually perceive who Satan was and who this evil was. That Satan was going to return as their friend and was going to be deceitful. And this is what the clergy have sought to do. The clergy have sought to take religion and use it as a weapon. They hide behind religion and they use religion as a form of control. And so people who have basically identified that this is what happens with religion in these times, in these lower ages, in the Iron Age, have now actually thrown the baby out with the bathwater. So now they've said all religions are bad. All religions were only created to control mankind. But this is not the truth. Religion is there to move mankind out of ignorance, move him to a more spiritual understanding of himself and his nature. But when we have those false apostles and those who wish to use this knowledge in a way that is something that controls mankind, then it can be seen as something negative. But this is why we have to return to the teachings and not look to the clergy as who we follow, but look to the scriptures, and not just the Christian Bible, but look to all of the scriptures, all of the ancient texts, all knowledge that was left to us. We need to go and study. And this is another thing that the corrupted clergy have done, is put fear into people that if they are not just reading the Bible and they are reading any other information or knowledge, that this means that they are looking at something evil and it's a sin and that they are going to be punished. And this is just a way, again, for these organized religions to control people by using knowledge, instead of people taking control of themselves, control of their own intellect, and going and searching out information and knowledge from other areas, not just what the Vatican has approved. Because even when Christians say that they are Christian, they are not Catholic, Christians actually take the interpretations of their Bible from Catholic canon law. So you may think you're not Catholic, but the way you interpret the Bible, the way your clergy interpret the Bible, is taken from Catholic canon law. So you are actually interpreting the scriptures in the way that the Catholics have deemed law. And so they have taken it upon themselves to be the mouthpiece for God. They have taken this position for themselves, and there is no mandate from God. There is no mandate in any scripture that says that the Catholic Church are the complete authority over all divine revelation. This just does not hold true. And so again, people are fooled into believing this because the clergy look very godly. They have very impressive temples. They have very impressive churches. And this is a way that materialism seeks to fool people into believing that because something appears to be grand and appears to be godly, then it must be, when in fact the Bible also teaches that it is those who are not appearing to be of high authority, and they don't appear to be rich and they don't appear to be noble, who are the real workers of the you know, of divine knowledge, who are the ones that actually are walking the path of righteousness, the ones that aren't actually holding themselves up to be this huge authority like these major organizations. It's those that are just taking the scriptures and applying the scriptures as they are taught within their Bible and within their texts to their lives. They are the ones that are in possession of the truth. So people need to, once again, trust themselves. This is what it comes down to. These are part of our tests. We have to trust ourselves. Now, lastly, Jesus again warned that beware of the scribes. Now, this is probably just a translation from beware of those who have possession of the scriptures and who like to walk around in long robes and love respectful greetings in the marketplaces. Well, look at all of the different ceremonies that the Roman Catholic Church have and the Christian Church have, and even Islam. I mean, they've turned these ceremonies to be basically just a full embodiment of what religion actually is. They've forgotten that it's very simplistic. It's all about your connection to the prime creator. There is no need for a middleman. There is no need for somebody to give you access to the prime creator. We all have access to the prime creator in our own homes, anywhere we are. If we go and sit in the middle of a forest near a stream, we have access to God. We don't need to go to a church to have access to the prime creator, because we are all connected by our hearts and our minds to the prime creator. So the only reason that there were scribes and that there were clergy were to help people understand knowledge that would give them more of a connection to more of a personal connection to the prime creator. But now what has happened is that the clergy have taken full control of all of this knowledge, and now they say, well, without us you cannot access God, you cannot access the prime creator, because you need us to get through God. And this isn't what scriptures teach us. And even Christians who misinterpret where the verse relates to everyone, all mankind must go through Jesus to get to God. This means that Jesus is a symbol of the firstborn divine man, and so everything was created through divine man, because mortal man is an extension of divine man. And so to get through to God, you need to find your divinity. You need to find that connection with your divine nature, which is connected to divine man, of which Jesus is just a symbol. There are other symbols for the firstborn divine man, which is also Thor, Horus, also Shiva. There are many different names for the firstborn divine man, just as there are many different names for for God. We have Zeus, we have Osiris, we have Vishnu, we have all different names. Allah, Allah is just another word for God. It's the Arabic name for God. I mean, Christians that live in the Middle East who read the Christian Bible call God Allah. It's just another name for God. And so what people have done is taken these names and they've personified them. They've made them an idol. And this is exactly what Christians do when they seek to use Jesus as a personification of this man with a beard and long hair. They're just basically idolizing a symbol, because Jesus is also related to the tribe of Dan. When we look at the tribes of Israel, which is where we can actually see that the Jews are related to the tribes of Israel, and the tribes of Israel are actually talking about the sons of God. And so this is the divine race, and there are 288 within the divine race of every nation: white race, yellow race, red race, and black race. Now, once again, I have more information in regards to this. This is also information that can be verified through cross-culture research into different mythologies, different theologies, different texts. And what we have to do is take all of these fragments and we have to put them together so we have an understanding for the truth. And when we understand the truth, then we can understand that the real Jews, in what Scripture is relating to, is speaking of divine man. Now, when we speak of Israel being the Holy Land, again, this is speaking of a symbol of the time when mankind are in a more ethereal part of the cycle. And so when we return to a more ethereal part of the cycle, then we can relate to the Holy Land, which is symbolized by Israel or Jerusalem or Bethlehem. And so if we look to this symbol of the tree of life once again, we can relate Israel and we can relate Zion and we can relate Bethlehem to the crown, to a more spiritual part of the cycle in which the ethereal is more present on the material plane, on the material part of our existence. And so because we exist in a cycle, and this is when we have to understand that there is another element called ether, and the ether moves in and out like the sea does, like the tide. And so when the ether moves back in, we have more access to our ethereal nature, and we exist in a more ethereal time. This is why the Golden Age speaks of a time of abundance, a time when mankind are not required to labor for food and for access to provisions, because everything is very abundant in this time when the ether is more present. As the ether moves out, then we become more physical. Our access to our ethereal nature becomes more difficult to access. And so this is why we are no longer in Zion, we are no longer having access to Israel. And Israel is basically also speaking of the nation of the divine race when they are first, once again, reset into a new golden year, a new golden age, I should say. And they all are together before they start to move to the four corners of the earth. And again, we can see the parables in Scripture are relating to this. And so we have to understand how to look beneath the allegory, because once again, Jesus even teaches that everything is said in allegory, because it is up to people to go and seek out the information themselves so that they be worthy of this truth, that they be worthy of understanding this knowledge, because they've actually had the courage to go and seek it out because they wanted to find the truth. Jesus taught, seek until you find. Don't stop seeking until you find. He didn't say just seek in the Catholic canon law and only look at the information that the Vatican tell you you're allowed to look at. He said seek until you find. And he also said that everything is said in parables, so that those who are not worthy of the truth may be ever seeing but never perceiving. Otherwise, they might turn and be forgiven. And this is because, as I said, there is only a certain weight of souls that move into the new great year, that move into the golden age. And so to be worthy of this, you have to pass your tests. And part of your tests aren't just following what people tell you to believe. It's going and trusting in your own intellect and seeking knowledge out. And so this is exactly what people have to do. And so again, when speaking of Israel, if we do want to have a look at what Israel would symbolize, if there is a place on our earth that we could call more connected to the ethereal than other places, then we can look to Egypt for this, and we can see this within the fractal nature of our universe, but we can also see this in information left in the ancient texts by Hermes Mercurius Trismegistus, where it says, art thou not aware, O Asclepius, that Egypt is the image of heaven, or rather that is the projection below of the order of things above? If the truth must be told, this land is indeed the temple of the world. So, you know, Israel created by men in 1948 and politicians after World War II in 1948 is not the Israel that is being spoken of in the Bible. So again, people have to understand this so that they are not basically being led astray. Now, we also see that the Corpus Hermetica speaks of this different degree within mankind from divine to mortal man. And he goes on to say that the intellect, Otat, is drawn from the very substance of God. In men, this intellect is God, and so some men are gods, and their humanity is near to the divine. When man is not guided by intellect, he falls below himself into an animal state. All men are subject to destiny, but those in possession of the Logos, which commands the intellect from within, are not under it in the same manner as other. God's two gifts to man of intellect and the Logos have the same value as immortality. If man makes right use of these, he differs in no way from the immortals. Speaking of the gods, because the gods are also called the immortals, because they are immortal. The divine man, the divine race, are immortal. They are the children of God, and they will pass through every cycle into the golden age, regardless of whether they are fallen angels, okay, which is another symbol for the divine who have moved from their path because they are ignorant to themselves. They do not understand who they are in the lower ages. They forget and they move into ignorance also. And they also display behaviors that are not in alignment with, you know, virtue and, you know, godly behavior. And they are also not in alignment with universal law in some of the actions that they take. But this is not something that will determine their fate because they are immortal. And what will happen is that they will realize who they are, and then because they realize that they have failed themselves and also failed in their responsibility, then they will move to correct this and to elevate themselves out of their baser, more animalistic nature and move back into a position where they are there to help mortals, because the real kings and queens are the divine. The real royal, when you look at the word royal, they are basically the actual divine race. They are the kings and queens within the divine race, and the crowns relate to their halos, because all divine man, when he moves into a more ethereal part of the cycle, will display that divinity in a more physical way. And so mortal man will be able to perceive physically a difference between those who are divine and those who are mortal. In these times, we cannot make that, you know, we cannot see that difference. And so we are then able to be fooled by those who take control of this knowledge and then seek to basically use it against us. In a time where we are in a more ethereal state within our existence, this is something that we can perceive. And so those who are divine will be known to us, and only God knows who the Jews are at these times. Just because someone follows Judaism does not mean that they are the children of God, because mankind do not decide who the children of God are or who the Jews are. Only God knows his own, and when that time is upon us, this will be revealed to all mankind. And so we do not want to be led around by propaganda and psyops against the Jews, because the Vatican have sought to mislead mankind into believing that the Jews are evil, and having this propaganda send people into the ditch without a real understanding of what the Jews actually relates to and what Israel actually relates to. Israel is not a nation that exists anywhere else but in symbolism. And we will only know Israel and Zion when the golden age is once again returned in the cycle and the ether is more present. But because the ether is not present, it is returning. This is why we're seeing a lot of earth changes and we're seeing so much disruption, is because we are moving towards that time where the cycle is about to be reset. This is also what the Ouroboros symbolizes. I've done videos on all of this information, and as I've said, if people want to seek further, then please go and look at these other videos, again, where I've used cross-culture referencing into different theologies, different symbolism, different texts, to give us an understanding of what these symbols are representing. And so again, we can see that these alchemy diagrams are relating to the different degrees of divinity within mankind. The tree of Jesse, now this is a religious symbol, the tree of Jesse, Jesse being God, and it is showing the 12 different tribes of Israel, which relate to the different divine, within the divine race, because it's all divided, as I said, within the white race, the red race, the black race, and the yellow race. And each of these kings represents the tribes. And then we also have the firstborn divine female, who is a Messiah. There are 8 Messiahs. There are 2 Messiahs, male and female, for each of the 4 races. So there are 8 Messiahs in total. And the firstborn female is symbolized by Mary, and she holds the demigod. And the demigod is baby Jesus, the symbol of baby Jesus. This is why we have to understand what these symbols are relating to, so that we have a grasp of the knowledge that has been stolen from us. And so the reason that Mary is a symbol that is quite important is because Mary gives material birth to the firstborn demigod, because there are different degrees within the gods. There are the gods and the demigods, and the gods are the gold and silver, and then the demigods are the bronze. Now the gold and silver tribes relate to the gods who are born, who are created both physically and ethereally by God. However, the bronze gods are created materially on earth, and so they are spiritually created and connected to the prime creator, to God, but they are materially created on earth, birthed through the gold and silver tribes. And this is why we have the demigods, and this is why the baby Jesus represents the firstborn demigod, because there are demigods in every race, the yellow race, the black race, and the red race as well. There are demigods in all of the races. And we also see here with this diagram, once again, we're seeing that Jesus represents the firstborn extension of the prime creator, and then those all of the creations that are basically manifest by God, that are created by God, are birthed onto the material plane by the female. This is why the female is a very important symbol, because the symbol of the female relates to giving birth, creation of God's seed onto the material plane. And this is why we see that that Mary was seeded by God, and the child of God was then birthed onto the physical plane. And this is because each of the divine females, when they were created with the seed of the demigod already within them, to be birthed onto the physical plane upon first creation of mankind being created onto the physical plane. Whenever that happened, billions of years ago, who knows? You know, I mean, that is something that happened to start man. This is what the information regarding Adam and Eve are. This is in relation to the first seeding of the gods onto the physical plane. And then after this first seeding, we are in a consistent cycle where we go from the higher and lower ages, and at the end of every great year, there comes a time where all souls are weighed, and those who are found with the light within them, that weight is then moved into the new golden age with divine man. There is only a certain weight that can go through into the new age. It's just the way the universe works. It's not evil, it's not mean, it's just everything is universal law. There is only a certain weight of mortal soul that can move into the new great year with the divine. And so those souls have to be the most virtuous and righteous, who have collected the most light within themselves, because they have stayed true to their path and stayed in alignment with universal law, even when there were outside influence trying to move them off their path and tempting them away from their path. They stayed true to their path, and so they move into the new great year with the Jewish, who are the real children of God, who are the first extensions of the prime creator. They are the tribes of Israel. So this is why we need to understand information and not allow propaganda and psyops to move us from the truth, because when we actually look beneath the surface, where most people do not want to seek, we can see that everything that we have believed to be true is actually not supported by any of the ancient texts and any of the teachings from the philosophies and any of the esoteric information that is left to us. And so we need to have the courage to go and look at this information and apply this information to our experience. Because if we just look at this information but we don't apply it to our experience, then really it is of no use to us. You have to make the changes within your life for this information to be relevant or to be of any benefit to you at all. So before I go, I just want to basically show how different philosophers, both modern and ancient, have told us that we need to understand that all religion and all art and all science are originating from the same source. All knowledge comes from the same source, and it's only those different expressions of the same information that turn into different religions and different philosophies. But when we actually look beneath the surface, we can see that all of this knowledge is related to the same divine revelation, the same information. And so Paracelsus goes on to say that all numbers are multiple of one, all sciences converge to a common point, all wisdom comes out of one center, and the number of wisdom is one. Even Albert Einstein went on to say that all religions, arts, and sciences are branches of the same tree. All these aspirations are directed towards ennobling man's life, lifting it from the sphere of mere physical existence and leading the individual towards freedom. And Manly P. Hall, one of my favorite modern philosophers, goes on to say that all great world religions, though divided by the superficial differences of their exoteric creeds, unite in their esoteric knowledge. It is this secret doctrine which all the faiths of the world share in common, that interests all the sincere students of religion. The quest of essential wisdom is the great work of life. And so I hope I have gone on to explain why there is a difference between the real Jews and those who are imposters and call themselves Jews, and even those who are not real Jews because they are only giving themselves this label because they follow Judaism, do not deserve any hatred, do not deserve to be maligned, and do not deserve to be attacked. We have to understand that there is an element within mankind who are very evil, and have sought to take control over us by using these types of psyops and this propaganda to create division. And so I really do hope that those who are now blaming the Jews for everything evil on the planet understand who the real enemy are, and that is the Jesuit. They are the ones who have taken control of all of our knowledge, have taken control of all of our governments and all of our religious organizations. And so I hope that people will now look further into what I am saying about the Jesuits and go and do some real research into the Jesuits and see how they have sought to take control of us and see the warnings that were left to us about the Jesuits. And I really do hope that people stop just repeating that it's the Zionist Jews and it's the Jews who are responsible for all of the evil and wickedness across the planet. And I just wish that more people would do the research and would take the time to go and investigate this information on a very deep level, because unless you go deeper, you are just going to stay on the surface and chase your tails with all the other sheeple, basically. You know, just because somebody watches alternative media doesn't mean they're any less of a sheeple than somebody who watches CNN or the mainstream media, because if you aren't digging deeper, if you aren't looking beneath the surface and really going deeper, then you really are no different to somebody that watches CNN or the mainstream media. You have to want this knowledge, and you have to want to go and look deeper, and you have to leave all of your prejudices aside, all of the preconceived opinions and ideas that you had. You have to leave them aside, and you have to just go and seek truth, because you want the truth for no other reason than you just want to understand who you are and the reality that you exist in. And if that is your motivation, then there is no reason that you cannot elevate yourself out of ignorance and have an understanding for who you are as an ethereal being as well as a physical being, and where your place in the universe actually is. Well, all of these diagrams are available in the Facebook group. The Facebook study group link will be in the description under the video, and you can go and access all of these diagrams for yourself. And as I said, if you are interested in looking at all of this information on a deeper level, I have done many other videos giving you the tools that you need to go and seek further, because as I say to people, I do not expect people to believe what I relate here, and I am not here to convince anybody. All I am doing is taking the different fragments of knowledge that have been left to us, and I'm bringing it all back together again so we have a bigger picture, so we have a complete picture of who we are and what has been taken from us. But what I encourage everybody to do is actually take what I have basically relayed here and go and research this further using the actual texts and using the actual information that was left to us by the ancients. And all of these texts, all the links can be found in the saved files of the Facebook study group. So you can go and access all of the actual texts and go back to the very basics by using these texts, and you can find those links in the group as well. So I hope this has actually helped people understand that there is a difference between the real Jews and the people that call themselves Jews but are basically imposters and aren't actually Jews. The only way we are going to know who the real Jews are is when that time is upon us and they are revealed to us, because we will be able to perceive who the real Jews are as opposed to who mortal man is. There will be a difference. And so until that time, it really is not in anybody's best interest to go maligning anybody that calls themselves a Jew, because until that time is upon us, we do not know who is divine and we do not know who is mortal. Well, I'll leave it here, guys. And as always, peace out.